Saving the best for last, are we? Hello and welcome to my channel, and in this video we're going to be talking about the secret projects from the Year of Sanderson, and specifically the Sunlit Man. I've seen a lot of people obviously doing Sunlit Man reviews and also doing a video kind of talking about the projects as a whole, so I thought instead of doing yet another one, I'll just kind of combine it with my review of the Sunlit Man. So we're going to do both. We'll talk about the Sunlit Man specifically, and then talk about some thoughts on the secret projects in general after that as well. So let's jump in and talk about it. The Sunlit Man, and I still don't have my physical copy yet. I was hoping it would be here because I finished this a couple weeks ago, very shortly after it came out. So I guess not quite a couple weeks ago, but close. I was hoping I'd have my physical copy right now to do it, but I ended up being able to get to this one right away, unlike the last one, and I was pretty happy with that because I enjoyed this one quite a lot. This is another Cosmere novel, and like the others, it takes place kind of way different than the normal timeline, but this one is specifically more related to Stormlight, so I can see why a lot of people had this would be their favorite, because it actually is touching Stormlight, which is, of course, Sanderson's biggest series, and so it makes sense that it's going to be something that more people are going to want to see and read, and all of that. I would say, because I've heard some people say that you should read all of the Stormlight books before this. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, because this doesn't really spoil anything, but it kind of does. And so originally I said you could probably read this as a standalone when I was just chatting with somebody about it, but I think it would make sense if you've at least read Stormlight, just because you'll find out about some things that you wouldn't find out until later in Stormlight. Although I think if you hadn't read it, and you read this, and then you later read Stormlight, you might not remember those specific things, or it might not dampen the experience, but this is probably the only one out of any of them where it doesn't make sense. Although there are definitely Cosmere references aplenty in the two other Cosmere ones in there. Now, the Sunlit Man I do think was probably my favorite. I wasn't a huge fan of Tress. I actually really liked Frugal Wizard, although that was just kind of an oddball, super different thing. Yumi I thought was really good. It wasn't quite my kind of story, but it was really good and had those flashes of kind of old school Sanderson. And then the Sunlit Man just really did feel like a Sanderson type of novel. This one's a little bit more on the sci-fi side in a lot of ways, but still has a lot of fantasy feel to it also, because of the fact that we have technology, but we also have magic. And the setup of this tiny world where the sun, basically, as it is coming across, it just vaporizes anything there. So it's a really small world, but to survive on it, you have to constantly be moving and trying to avoid it. And so it's an interesting study, too, with the technology, because it's these people who have fairly advanced technology as far as like ships that can, fly above the ground and be constantly moving, but they have less technology with some other things as well. And the setup here is that we have a tyrannical leader who is trying to just take over basically everything, and we have a group of freedom fighters. So something familiar we've seen with Sanderson, but our main character ends up then becoming kind of embroiled in that whole situation. I did really like the way the characters presented, because their actual name, because they go by Nomad in this book, and their actual name isn't specifically said until pretty late in the book, although you could tell pretty early if you were paying attention to the clues. And so I liked that, because there were all these little clues and pieces, so that if you are very familiar with the other Cosmere stuff, you'd be like, oh, this is this person, I know exactly who this is, and here's all these little nods. But if you weren't, you could still read it and just not realize who they were specifically. And that's where I think this still has some standalone power, although it is a bit more involved, and like I said, does tell some kind of Stormlight types of things. But this really just had that kind of Sanderson feel. Now, this is one where I feel like having it be shorter and in the format that it is did hurt it a little bit, because there were certainly some times, and I've heard some others have the same complaint, where some things just seemed to move very quickly. There were a few things where they needed to do something and time was very short, and then we just kind of glossed over and they just kind of did it, and that just kind of took me out just a little bit, because it made the pacing feel odd that we were just kind of glossing over some of these important things. But I was really enjoying the book, and so I didn't mind it too terribly. Always interesting getting to see a new Cosmere world, getting to see new magic systems and dynamics, and I've enjoyed kind of the glimpse into the future with Cosmere that we've gotten with some of these secret novels as well. because it's given it a really different feel. And so overall, I think this was my favorite out of them, because my favorite otherwise might have been Frugal Wizard, just because, like I said, the humor worked for me. I know not everybody did. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't crazy on Tress, and I liked Yumi, but this one was probably my favorite out of the batch. Really solid, fast-paced, very easy to read, lots of interesting stuff, whether you're super into the Cosmere or not. And I liked the development of the characters and just exploring this world. A lot of the things that I like in Sanderson, especially the shorter Sanderson stuff, where it's just more focused on what's going on here versus kind of the wide things, you get a lot of, so I enjoyed it. Minor complaints with some of the pacing feeling off, but that was really the only issues that I had with this one for the most part. Really enjoyable read, got through it quickly, and had a lot of fun. So transitioning to talking about the rest of the secret projects. And I'll note here that I'm not going to really talk any specific spoilers from any of the secret projects, but I am going to talk about where in the timeline they are. It's evident in each of the books when it is. So if you've read them, you're totally fine. Or if you don't care about having the minor spoiler of where they are on the timeline, I feel like it's not a huge thing. It's kind of revealed throughout in the first one, and then the other two is really evident from the start, but you've been warned there. But with all of these taking place in the space age of Cosmere, I think it's interesting because we have in Tress, we see toward the end, the fact that we get confirmation. I said I wouldn't specifically spoil this, so I won't, but we get confirmation from there, a couple of spots actually, that this is space age. And Yumi as well makes references to show that this is space age as well, even though this is a completely different place. And it's also very, very evident through Sunlit Man that this also takes place pretty far in the future and is once again in the space age of the Cosmere. So it's interesting to see this because we've had a couple of things, because like I think Sixth of Dusk, the novella that was in Arcanum, that one I think is also in space age, if I'm thinking of the right one, with the birds. But we haven't really done a ton of it, and so that's where, although I wasn't like crazy on all of these, Tress was kind of hit or miss for me. I know a lot of people loved it because of the fairy tale thing. That's just not my thing. And then Yumi was good, and Sunlit Man was really good. But all of these I think are important because of the fact that for 2 out of the 3, Sanderson was testing writing in Hoyt's voice, which he's not done since like the original Lyre of Partnell or whatever it was. That was the like first draft of Dragonsteel, which is going to be the last thing he writes too. But he said before that in Era 3 of Mistborn, or what's going to be Era 3 now, it might be Era 4 now, I guess, because he put in 2, which wasn't originally planned. So, but in the later Mistborn, that's going to be Space Age. He said before Hoyd's going to be the main character. So I think part of this was just planning for that and trying it out and testing how that was going to work, which I feel like can only make those books better later because he's had some practice. He's gotten some feedback. He's seen what people like and don't like. He's seen what works and what doesn't. And also, it's just getting to see him, try out these different styles, try out these more connected things, I think is going to be beneficial as well, because that's where the Cosmere is going. And I know not everybody's a huge fan of it really starting to come to the fore, like with the Avengers Assemble style where we're seeing everybody, but that's always where it's been going. And it seems really, really evident that the at least the back half, and probably Stormlight 5 at least as well, but the back half of Stormlight is going to be, it seems, very, very Cosmere involved. And I think with reading The Lost Metal 2, that showed you really the direction that we're heading with large-scale Cosmere involvement. And there were hints of that throughout some of the secret projects as well, just seeing what different people, parties, groups are doing, and some other really cool references like that. So I think this was overall a positive thing. I was, after the kind of the debacle with Tress, I was regretting my decision to back for the physicals a bit, because I mean, they're very pretty. They're behind me now, because I didn't even mention, but if you saw my live stream rearranging, my shelves are so different. Still getting used to it, but I think I like it. But they are very beautiful books, and I don't have the Sunlit Man yet. So they're very pretty, and the price I don't think was outrageous for what you get, but with Tress and just the delays and the delays and the delays, I was at the point like I probably would have canceled if that would have been an option, just because I was annoyed at it. Did eventually get it. Frugal took a while. Yumi's the only one that I got in like a really timely fashion, and I was hoping I would with Sunlit too, but it hasn't shipped yet even, so, and it's been a couple of weeks since release, so I don't know what's gonna happen, but so that was kind of a rough thing. I don't think that I would do something like this again if Sanderson does a Kickstarter like this in the future, because I knew the content was potentially going to be hit or miss. And after I first backed, they started releasing what they were going to be. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about these. But I had a good time reading them. It was really fun to do, to talk about them, to just have those books that everyone's reading once a quarter, where it comes out and there's tons of people to talk through. So I think it worked really well for that, for kind of the booktube community in general. Just being able to go through and talk about all of these books. And they're very pretty books. And like I said, I will definitely admit that. So I had a fun time with that. But I think, honestly, is the big thing that I'm looking at is, I think, like or hate the secret projects, this was practice. This was Sanderson trying new things, trying different styles he hasn't done before, trying different voices he hasn't really done before, and trying to write in a different time frame in the way future that he's eventually going to need to write mainline novels in. And so I think him getting to try a lot of this stuff out, we get a bunch of extra books as well, which is a positive thing. I'm glad that this happened, and I think it'll like I said, be really good in the future, and just kind of help with some of those future novels for sure. And so that's kind of where I landed. I had my ups and downs with the books and with the process, but overall I think it's going to be a net positive thing that we had these. So that's sort of where I landed on those in general. So those are really my thoughts on the Sunlit Man, and just kind of my general thoughts on the 4 secret projects as well. Now that we're coming to a close, I'm still looking to receive my last one, but I've not read all 4. And it was a fun thing to do kind of throughout the year. Up and down with them, it was just kind of nice to have. I didn't get any really Sanderson fatigue. It was just nice knowing I had these lighter stories to jump into that were pretty quick reads, so I had fun with it for sure. But let me know your thoughts on both the Sunlit Man, the secret projects in general. Would love to hear from you, and see if you had similar thoughts to me, or if you had a different experience. Always interested to see that. I know some people didn't do the physical tiers, so if you just did ebook and audio, you probably had a very positive experience with like the shipping, because you didn't have to have anything physically shipped. So I could definitely see that. But yeah, would love to hear from you on that. Make sure, of course, to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizardly Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether any of these books, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun, and we would love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.